have no problem with them holding war games that have necessary training. But that would be like holding war games at Pearl Harbor and so on. And this is an outrage. And that's his website. Within a month after that, he already had 50,000 signatures. Now this is your heritage. This is your legacy. And this must not be allowed to happen. I'm sorry if I get a little carried away here. But, after holding those bones and realizing their remains are going to be there forever, when we were there with General Chandler, our opening day little barbecue on the beach, I talked to Chandler about this, and I said, "You cannot." I knew what he was there for. I said, "You cannot do this. This is sacred ground." And he's all, "We'll take that into account." Really? How? Because these bones have been dredged up for 70 years now, presumably for another 70 years. And these Marines today won't be knowing what they're be walking on or destroying or trampling. It's not just the sites, it's what's lying on the ground in the jungle. It's very, very dense jungle, as you can see, and Professor Giles, whose dad was one of the Marines, he's been out there probably 4 dozen times now. He leads tours across the Pacific. And, you know, they're going to be seeing this stuff forever, and you can't stop it. So I'm sorry I've carried on too far. You're certainly welcome to come up there and see any of this. And again, it's a great honor to be here. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Who's the initiator for the fact native?
Well, eventually they discovered many years later that they really didn't need it, but it was good to have it like a spark plug. It initiated it. It sent out this flood of neutrons that at the point of maximum compression kick-started or initiated a reaction. But then they went to printed or solid, electronic versions of this, and I don't know, I'm not privy to this, whether or not they use them anymore, but there was so much redundancy built in. Instead of one radar unit, they had 4. Instead of one gun primer, they had 3. Instead of one barometric switch, they had 6. Instead of one detonator, they had 2. It was backups for the backups for the backups. So.
And on the gun barrel on the
yeah.
Little boy.
Yeah.
Was that? This is a naive question. Was that rifle?
No, it was smooth bore.
I wouldn't think it would make.
No, there was no need, because that when you rifle a barrel, it's to give it spin, which gives it stability when it's outside the gun barrel. So this didn't ramp. It's only going 50-some inches. Anything else? Yes.
I wonder what you would like to see happen to Tinian if they. I mean, it's kind of natural how it's overgrown. Just leave it alone.
There's fewer than 2,000 people that live in Tinian.
So you could.
Saipan has 70,000 people. They have casinos, they have Blockbuster, they have Walgreens and anything else. But Tinian, believe me, they have found floating containers that fell off cargo ships, and they use those for garages. I don't think there's a new store or new building anywhere in Tinian, and they rely a lot on tourism.
So would you like a museum or a visitor center or something there and open access to?
Well, they have open access right now.
Okay.
But with the restricted access, if you're an historian and you don't schedule your trip in advance, you might get there and, we have a war game this week and now you can't go up there. Plus, that live ammo, trust me, is all over Tinian. They have large areas where you can run a motor scooter and just scoot around the island, because it's only 6 by 12 miles. And you get to an area where there's a sign that says live ordnance. I don't want to go back. That stuff is so fragile. A fly landing on that artillery show and say, the worst problem they have is the Chinese tourists who come in droves like to pick up souvenirs, including grenades and all sorts of things. And they are confiscating this stuff at both the Tinian and the Saipan airports constantly. The Navy, about once a month, gathers up all the stuff that everybody finds. They take it to the quarry there and blow the heck out of it. So, and that's World War II ordnance. The new stuff is going to be raining down also. So. Oh yes, this is all going to be. They're hoping that this will be part of this Manhattan Project National Park System that's already been signed into law, and hopefully will soon take place, and we can come visit sites where the Fat Man and Blue Boys were assembled. Right now, I've tried for years to get into those sites. They're in the process of restoring them, and I'm continually go away. So I can't get there. I would like to, but I'll have to wait until it's been restored. Yes?
When I was in the military, back in the 70s, we gave back Japan all the islands. I think there were like 28 islands.
Right.
Iwo Jima, Saipan, Tinian.
Well, no, Saipan and Tinian are part of the Commonwealth. I don't know if they vote, I believe, or not. Yes, okay, they vote, but they're us. They're U.S. Guam, Saipan, and Tinian are the Northern Marianas Islands. No.
Where did Japan at one time?
Oh, there was a thriving sugarcane industry that was run by the Japanese for decades.
I heard we gave back all the islands.
No.
We gave back 28 islands, so it wasn't all the islands.
No, it wasn't all the islands. And what I found out when I went there in 2005, I knew nothing about. I knew all about the atomic bomb areas, but the rest of it was, okay. They took us down by bus to the very south end of the island. It's only 12 miles long. That's where all the bonsai cliffs, the suicide cliffs are, where hundreds on Tinian and possibly as many as 15 to 20,000 on Saipan committed suicide under direct orders from the emperor. You will not surrender to the Americans. You must kill yourself, and he did so. And that area, I have the photographs, is probably one of the most pristine, gorgeous, what you would imagine a Pacific Island paradise to look like. It's 10 stories because the edge of both Saipan and Tinian, for the most part, is about 10 stories off the ocean. And it is absolutely, it's what I grew up near Lake Michigan. On a good day in August was maybe a green. This was this deep blue skies, the albatross and the seagulls crying to each other. And to realize what happened there, and there's a cliff face up above that goes down to the vanishing point, pockmarked with dozens of caves. And every day those people looked down there and they saw their fellow Japanese singly and in family groups holding their children walk or run to the edge to join their ancestors in the great beyond. And they knew that they were going to be doing it next. And there's no beach down there, it's all rocks, and there have to be the bones, tens of thousands of bones down there. And they have, if you step back on, the grass is only about this high, there are memorial markers from little ones this high to huge, elaborate ones like tombstones that the people from Japan today bring constantly and erect as a memorial to their ancestors who did this. There are bleachers there. There are huge plane loads that come on anniversaries to honor the relatives, and it is heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. And don't want to get emotional again, but every time I've gone, the 2 times I've been to Tinian, I took the motor scooter and went down there all by myself, so I was completely alone. And the spirits come rushing at you. You can't stop it. And I broke down each time, realizing what a tragedy, what a horror. And this was a full year before Hiroshima that they were willing to do this. So if we had had to invade the islands, every man, woman, and child would have been trained to defend the island. The reunions of the 509, we had 5 buses when we came here in 1995. Now we can't even fill 1 bus. They, in the Saturday afternoons, would meet in the hotel ballroom. And they would all, if they wanted to, get up to the podium and what'd you do after the war? Because we know what you do during the war, and you're going to lie anyway. So come on up, and they would tell how the companies like I worked for had formed joint ventures with Japanese companies. And they'd be sitting at their desk, and one day there would be a Japanese man or woman standing there. Are you so-and-so? Yeah, how can I help you? Were you in that group that dropped the atomic bombs? And of course, at that point, their hair raises on their neck, and because they had all had stories about how they'd been screamed and yelled at and confronted, and angry letters and phone calls. And they said, no, do not be afraid. I was 14, I was 15, I was 16. I had been worked in something like that, or I had been given a spear, or a grenade, or a satchel charge, and and shown what tree or what rock, and the first American I saw, I was to step out and kill that American and myself. And because you did what you did, you took our military away from us, you gave us freedom and democracy. For the first time in our entire history of Japan, we could own private property, we could decide our own fate, we could vote for our leaders. I want to thank you, and I want to invite you to dinner. You will be our guest of honor. The first Hibakusha I ever met was Yoko Matsubara, and it was a day, 2 days before I went to my first reunion in Chicago. And she sat in the room, and gave her testimony with her head down. She never once looked up because she recited this probably thousands of times. And she said something that went over the heads of everybody in that room, because it was at the Milwaukee Peace Institute or something. And she said that as I think it was a 13 or 14-year-old girl, she was working in a munitions plant. She said, we were a legitimate target. All my fellow classmates had been pulled out of school, and we were there. Now, if you're killed by a really, really big bomb, or a bullet, or a grenade, or something, the object of war has always been to break things and kill people, so that one side or the other finally says, we've had enough. And Japan had not reached that point yet. So, again, I thank you all